I was about 16 years old in summer 1963. Had my first construction job. First time really out of little town Spring Grove that I had grown up in. First time a chance to work side by side with African American workers and learn from them and learn a little bit about what the world of work, the world of heavy construction was to them, being middle-aged and black versus the experience of a 17-year-old high school kid. Well, it was the summer of 1963, and I got a job during high school summer vacation. It felt like my first real job, although the summer before that I had worked on a horse farm, a thoroughbred horse farm. And it was a real job. We worked 6 days a week, 11 hours a day sometimes. But it was farm work, was kind of what I grew up with. The working climate was a little more informal than my job my junior year in high school, which was working for a union excavation company, concrete and excavation work. And this was the best company to work for. This company almost single-handedly, raised a good deal of farm boys out of working class to middle class during those years. And not many companies that I knew of, at least, were paying union wages at that time. And my brother had gotten a job working for this company, and my brother was kind of a construction genius, as it turns out. We already were beginning to realize that. Dropped out of high school, but really could run machines, really understood everything about a construction project. And he got me the job. So I was 16, 17. Didn't know anything about, barely knew, which end of the shovel. I was the kind of guy that the old guys would talk about, tell jokes about sending the kid to the trailer to get a left-handed hammer, and I probably would have gone a couple of times before I figured out what they were doing to me. So what do you do with a dumb, fairly strong kid? Well, you give him the hardest, dumbest job on the job, and in this job it was we were pouring thousands of feet of curbing, cement curbing. And back in those days, you had to take a steel form, by hand drive it into the ground with sledgehammers and steel form pins, and they poured the concrete between the curbing forms, and then all had to dry, for several hours at least, and set up. And then someone had to go and pull all those pins. And you did it basically with a crowbar and a chain. And you leaned over and you set the crowbar against the steel form. You don't want to get into the concrete because you'd notch it or make a dent in it if it was a little bit green. And sometimes the job was moving so fast you had to pull the pins when the concrete was a little bit green. And then you just would pull. You'd bend over and you'd take this crowbar and you would just lift with your legs and your back and pull that. Well, they were probably, some of them were close to an inch in diameter, pins. And this was in Zion, Illinois, so it was Lake County was notorious for the clay-packed soil. So it was hard work. And no overtime. We got union wages, but someone would put the crowbar on the curb before you started in the morning. You got out of your car exactly at 8 o'clock. And you got back in your car exactly at 4:30. No overtime. Someone else would put the tools out. And as the foreman would say, all I want to see from you guys is arse and elbows. I want to see you guys bent over, pulling pins. You're not paid to think, you're paid to work. So that was naturally the job that the kids get. They called us high school kids, college kids, dumb kids, and worse. So was the low job on the crew. Now, so basically, that was my job and a couple other high school kids, a couple younger college kids, and two middle-aged black guys who knew a lot about construction, much more than we did. But they did not have any connections in the company. They were union, sent out from the hall, as they said, and they were right there with us, doing the lowest, hardest job on the crew, and though they must have felt some humiliation being in that position, they were always very kind to me, at least, and to everyone, as I remember. And they give us good working man hints on how to survive in heat and that kind of hard work. I remember I'd look at my watch sometimes. We'd be suffering in that heat and pulling those pins and they'd say, "Oh, Jim, don't look at your watch. Don't look at your watch. That'll slow the time down. Never look at your watch." And so I just had this sense of, I guess I had a sense of privilege that I was only 16 and had somehow gotten that position where these men had worked in construction all their lives and hadn't gotten any higher maybe in the company than that particular skill, which required brawn, and really that was all. On the positive side, if it hadn't been for the union, they wouldn't have been there at all. Out in Rhubarb, way out in the country where the company was based, there wouldn't have been any black men living, any black families. There would have been very unlikely, or very few living, very unlikely to have that position at all. So the union was slowly changing things, looking back on it. But I also had this sense that there was an injustice. The work slowed down, and we got laid off. All the young kids got laid off, and these two black guys got laid off. And I remember having a sense that maybe I wouldn't be able to go to college because my father had died the year before, and there was no money, and this was going to be how I was going to get to college. And then I remember being called back and being very, very relieved, but didn't hear that those two black guys had called back. And I asked about it, but really never received any information. And I was telling someone about this. They said, "Well, did you ever bring it up, or did you talk to anybody about the inequity?" And my first thought was, someone said, "Did you tell the boss or the foreman?" My first thought was, I was afraid to even talk about the weather with the foreman. The foreman, wore these, state trooper mirrored glasses and ran around screaming at people. Had a big bumper sticker on his car that said, "I don't have ulcers, I give them." He was known as Firing Dick, I think was his name. But again, he eventually kind of took me under his wing, kept me working for several summers, and helped me get through college. And he was under that same pressure. When the owner would come, he would take his helmet off and put it under his arm, like a good cadet, and take his glasses off and just scurry right over to the boss's big car, and everybody was under this kind of intense pressure. I think most of the workers that I worked with had grown up working class or raised poor, or the only alternative was farming, and farming was dying at that point in the late 60s, mid 60s and 70s, and this was a union job, and you couldn't afford to. You couldn't afford to take care of yourself. If you were asked to do a job that wasn't safe, you couldn't afford to say, "I think I better wait till someone gets here with some safety glasses or a helmet." You just dug in. You just did the job because it felt like survival. It felt like survival. So everybody was under that system. And then the owner of the company, there were all kinds of kind of legendary stories about him starting out with nothing and with a wheelbarrow and cleaning the ashes out of wood burning stoves along Front Street in McHenry. So the system was pretty locked in. But the union was the wedge that began to change things. And I think that's an important piece of it as well.